Last week, I embarked on a challenge to finish my stack of unfinished stories, completing a story every single week. With 7 drafts ranging from a few months old to several years old, I knew I had a lot of work on my hands. Week 1 went exceptionally well. I took advantage of 2 days I had off work due to winter weather, and I completed 2 entire stories. Now, it's week 3, and I have another story to work on. Can I keep up this pace through the next 5 weeks? Will I survive the dreaded submission grind? Or will writer's block strike again, leaving me bleeding on blank pages? Well, we're gonna have to find out. Hey, these videos aren't sponsored, so I'd appreciate it if you checked out my publication, The Literary Fantasy Magazine. It's a biannual journal dedicated to character-driven fantasy. If you're a writer, submissions for issue 2 are open now. If you're a reader, issue 1 is available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon, or you could find a PDF and EPUB on our website. You can download a free sample by signing up for our newsletter. Alright, back to the video. Oh boy. It's week 2, and there's a few things I need to take care of if I want to achieve my 100 rejection goal and finish all my stories. The first is to complete a fantasy short story called The Lament. Second, I need to begin revising my stories from last week, and I'm adopting one from late 2024 that I sent to the New Yorker in October. It's January, 3 months after submission, which officially makes it my first rejection of the year. Even though rejection can hurt, the New Yorker is one of the most competitive short story markets in the entire United States. I'm not disappointed or surprised that my manuscript did not get accepted. According to Finian's goal, this isn't a bad thing. This just means that I've yet to find the right home for it. As we would with any piece of writing, I'd like to add a revision to my last video. In week 1, I stressed the importance of disregarding perfectionism in favor of completion. I argued that any story, regardless of quality, completed is better than a magnum opus not completed. I received an astute comment pointing out that sending out mediocre work to publishers can harm your reputation as a writer, and that's absolutely true. However, that comment missed the point of what I was trying to say, so allow me to clarify here. Yes, we should always send the best work we can to publishers. However, polish, quality, and sometimes even the entire point of the story doesn't come until revision and rewriting, not the drafting process. The drafting process is an opportunity to let your imagination run wild, get words on paper, and actually finish something. Just because you're finished with the draft doesn't mean you're sending that over to the New Yorker. The point of revision and rewriting is to look critically at your work and make those hard decisions to make it more marketable, polished, and higher quality than you did during the drafting process. A common metaphor is to allow yourself to be an artist and an editor. The artist is only concerned with beauty and ideas. That's the person that's going to get all the cool stuff onto your first draft. When approaching your draft for revision, you need to put the artist away and bring out the editor. The editor is scrutinizing, analytical, and realistic. They take that rough mold of your story and shape it into a final sculpture. Perfectionism, in my opinion, is a self-defeative goal. It's not achievable. We are human. We are inherently imperfect. And if your goal is to create the perfect piece of writing, well, you're going to be writing until the end of time without ever publishing anything. No creator has ever created any perfect piece of art. It has never happened, and it never will. If you put in your best effort, approach your work with a critical eye, work diligently and passionately, the resulting writing will be as close to perfection as you can get. The Lament is one of the oldest stories on this list. Actually, I think it is the oldest story on this list. I wrote it in early 2022, about 3 years ago. This was back when my fantasy setting was being used for Dungeons and Dragons. And this first draft, well, it's fundamentally flawed. Not only is it mired in the tropes of D&D, which aren't in my fantasy anymore for copyright reasons and also just for my own taste, but it also features a bunch of characters that my D&D buddies made. So I don't own those characters. Now, a lot of creators like to make stories about their RPG adventures, and that's cool, but it's just not my thing, and it's not what I want to achieve with my fantasy series. So in the rewrite, the POV character just needs to change, needs to be a different person. A lot of the side characters need to be reimagined so that they're my own intellectual property and not existing characters that other people have created. Additionally, I need to change almost every single plot element to reflect modern fantasy literature instead of a Dungeons and Dragons game. So what is staying the same? Well, the general concept. The POV character exists in the Northern Kingdom, going to a court meeting, and is going to be surprised what decisions are made there. The core theme has stayed the same, that the younger generations always end up overtaking the old. It's a cycle.
Damn, I'm good.
Alright, another update. So it's Tuesday of week 2, and I started on the story called The Lament, which is a fantasy story. This one has been kind of difficult in that I keep kind of getting stuck in areas and I need to take a break and start from a fresh set of eyes. So I did a bit on Friday last week, had some extra time, so did a little bit then. Then I did some more Monday morning, and more rolled, but I had to stop again. So the nice thing is that when I was a beginner, this stuff was really scary. It's like, oh god, I'm stuck. I have writer's block. When really, sometimes you just need to approach things with a fresh set of eyes. Even if you really I only got 400, 800 words in at a time. Sometimes you just need some time. Sometimes you just need to give your mind some rest to figure it out on its own. It's cold. Snow's going away, but we're having an Arctic cold front right now. And I have crap all over me now. Oh. It's officially week 3. And the Lament took longer than a week, which was expected. I was having a hard time with it, but I did finish the draft this morning. It helped because last week I spent 3 out of my 5 work mornings working on YouTube videos. I'm queued up for the month of January, so I don't need to worry about that this week. And I was able to get some writing done. I'm a lot happier with the new version compared to the old one from a couple years ago. It's a totally different story now, covering different characters, and I mean, the premise is the same, and the location is the same in my setting, but that original story was from when the fantasy setting was a D&D setting, rather than like a setting for my books. So there was a lot of growth between the 2 drafts. Getting it done, I mean, it just feels good. Even though I'm not the happiest with it, it needs more revision. I'm pretty stoked with the progress from one draft to the next. At week 3, it's Tuesday, week 3, and I still have a story this week I need to catch up on. I think I'm going to tackle The Coward and the Liar. Now that is the first short story I wrote seriously. It was about a month or 2 before I started my degree, and back in 22, I went back to college after 2 times dropping out. Started school again to go to school for writing because I'm crazy. Hence why I'm sitting out here in 10-degree weather vlogging.
Submitting to magazines isn't easy. It does get easier with time and experience, but it remains a grind, and honestly, I don't look forward to it. I avoided it almost the entirety of 24 to focus on editing my book. I think the best way to approach it is to sit down a couple days a week and commit some time to submit to 1 or 2 magazines during that sitting. To attain 100 rejections, we need to send out at least 100 submissions, if not more if we're accounting for hopefully accepted submissions. Time and math is on our side. If we submit to 3 magazines every week, we will have submitted 152 submissions by the end of the year. That is well above our goal of 100. If you know how to look for magazines, then you can achieve this in less than 2 hours of work every week. There are 3 resources that I use regularly to find publications to send my work to. I have the most experience with Duotrope, a frequently audited database of publications that you can filter by genre and style. It's extremely useful, but it does cost $5 a month or $50 for a year to use. They do have free services like their submission manager and spotlighted publications on their homepage, which I've found very helpful. Poets and Writers is another amazing database that is free to use, albeit with less features than Duotrope, but they have a more robust database of different types of programs. You do need to make a free account to use it, but they have a selection of university literary journals, contests, and MFA programs, among other things. Lastly, check out the bios of the writers and magazines you want to publish to, or have published in. Often contributor bios list a number of other publications that person has been featured in, which can give you ideas for other places to look. Now, the main challenge with the submission grind is that you need to submit to like dozens of different places. Most publications aren't interested in publishing the same author in back-to-back issues. Now, the worst thing you can do is scattershot your work to the wind. The most common advice you'll see is to read the journal and get a feel for what they publish. Now, I know what you're thinking. I don't have time to read 10 to 15 literary journals every month. How am I supposed to figure this out? Well, yeah, that's true. I don't have time for that either. However, it is important to tailor your submission to the journal. A lot of literary journals have their most recent issue archived on their website, available for free viewing. Pick a couple entries from the genre of your choice and get a feel for what their tone is like, whether they're cursing, what kind of narrative elements there are, whether it's more literary or plot-driven. If you're going to read something in-depthly, it should be the publication's guidelines. Read them thoroughly for every magazine and make sure you adhere to them perfectly. Because most magazines, when they receive an email from a submission that isn't following the guidelines, simply click delete. Another thing worth doing is keeping track of your submissions. Many journals allow simultaneous submissions, which means that you can submit your work to many publications at once. However, they will all ask that you inform them if your work is accepted elsewhere. If you haven't kept track of your submissions, it is almost impossible to know everywhere that you have submitted your work to. And thus, you're kind of looking like an asshole because your work got published and other people might be interested, and you haven't told them it's not available. Another very useful feature of tracking your work is that once your Duotrope submission has run out, you can refer back to your old submission trackers and see what magazines you submitted to, which gives you a starting point for starting a new submission grind. This is what I do. A simple spreadsheet showing the date, title of my submission, name of the publication, a link to their website, along with notes so I can mark whether my subs were accepted or rejected, and if there are any specific guidelines I need to be aware of. This is a little bit of extra work, but it goes a long way. It's week 3. The Lament was drafted and revised, I've sent out several submissions, and now it's time to tackle another story. The Lament was challenging, but I can only imagine that this one will be more challenging. The Coward and the Liar is the first short story I've ever written with the intention of selling it. It was in late 2022, and it was about a character going through a divorce getting chased around by a ghostly figure he called the Coward. There were several problems with the original draft. It was over 10,000 words, way too long for most publications. It was boring, it was dreary, it was poorly written, and it was overly negative. The character was unredeemably awful, and there was no hope to be found in the entire story. It was just a bummer the whole way through. As you can see, I've gone through countless drafts of this story for about a year before I gave up on it. Since then, I've realized I'm not a horror writer. I like to include horror elements sometimes into my stories, but writing horror just isn't my thing. So there needs to be a paradigm shift in this rewrite. I'm focusing in on my favorite elements of the story. Instead of the character going through a divorce, he's a widower. And that's not going to be entirely obvious for the first part of the story. Instead, I'm going to use that fact to inform his actions and dialogue. I also want to focus in on the musical elements from the original story. They were sprinkled in there, but I want it to be a core focus this time around. I think the power of music will help to put some hope into this story and actually talk about something other than being sad. The ghostly shadow figure will remain, however he's going to act more metaphorically. It's going to be a driving motivation for the character rather than something terrorizing him around every turn.
Yeah, piece of cake.
Well, look at that, the snow's gone. And usually, this place is full of water and birds and tadpoles and frogs, but it is February, which means that it's Wednesday of week 5. Oh my goodness, a lot more time has passed in the production of this than I thought it would. In my first video, I specified that the pace that I had in that first week of completing multiple stories was... Where's the camera? Hi. Was an exception. That third story took a couple weeks, about a week and a half. This last one has taken about 2. We're going on 3. And it's because life gets in the way. You know, work got busy. School. I'm in the hardest semester of my degree right now. So, you know, I have limited time. I wish I had all my time to write, but I in addition to the work and the obligations and the family, I also do other things. Like I make other things, like these videos. You know, like that's why I hate the 2,000 a word day. 2,000 a word day? 2,000 a day rule. I just don't like that because I mean I do write every day. I mean I have to for multiple things, but it's not always fiction, and it's not always something I can just quantify into a word count. So The Coward and the Liar, it is coming along. It's a total rework of the original. I didn't like the original. Nobody I sent it to really liked the original. And so I'm going with a similar concept, but it's a totally different story, totally different protagonist, similar setting, some similar thematic elements, and similar narrative elements. The hard part is balancing the grief and the sadness of the story with the healing and the more positive moments of the story. There needs to be a dynamic, there needs to be both, or it's going to get mired in negativity, which makes people not want to read. Who'd have thought? Yesterday I wrote a good over 1,000 words on it. I think I started with 800 in the draft, end of the day of 2,400, and it's still not there yet, but the bones are coming together. It is a skeleton, and I ended the day very melancholy. I was pretty sad. I had to put myself in this mindset afterward, like, hey, just a story, man. Life is good. You did good today. Writing every day is great. It's a good goal to have. It's very lofty, but it's not necessarily realistic for the working, studying, if you go to college, writer, especially if you have kids. I don't have kids yet, but I do have a growing family. I have 4 dogs. No, I have 2 dogs. I have multiple animals, that's what I'm trying to say, and a fiance, and we want to have kids. We're working towards having kids. And, you know, it's not going to get any easier to schedule out time. So consistency, being nice to yourself when you miss a day, and being able to rely on yourself to get back to it is the most important thing, more important than hitting an arbitrary 2,000 words a day. I will finish The Coward and the Liar. It will be done. I don't know when, though. I think I need to pause the story challenge. I got more than half of them done. I need to pause on that and start focusing on some bigger projects coming up for the magazine, and also just my own writing. I have a book coming out this year, like an actual book that I realize needs a lot more copy editing than I initially planned for. So it's going to be busy, and since I took so long on these last couple stories, maybe I don't have time to do every single story before. The plan was to get them all done and then work on the big projects, kind of use this to pad out the beginning of the year. Well, the beginning of the year is coming and going. It's the 5th day of February. It'll be the 50th day of February at this rate. So it's time that I get back to work.
Thanks for tuning in. As you can see from the video, these last couple weeks were a lot harder than the first one, so I hope I debunked any myths I might have inadvertently generated in that first one. Like I said, that was just a good week. That was where the inspiration was rolling and I was feeling really good. These last 2 stories kicked my butt, and that's okay, because they got done, and maybe they're not perfect, but I will revise them and make them as close to it as they can be. If you found this video enlightening, inspiring, heck, even entertaining, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Anyway, I'll see you next time.